we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like, that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady dead.
Well, not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because, holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you after what has been a couple of weeks due to busyness. We tried to get it done last week, woke up with no voice and was immediately very sick, but we are back, buddy. Obviously, right before we went live, there was some breaking news with your Pittsburgh Steelers, but we will get to some of those reactions with that in a little bit. But first off, how you doing, my friend?
Good. It's good to be back. Like you said, a couple weeks off there just because, we stuff going on with work and then with illness, and things just didn't pan out for us, and especially with the Saturday playoff games where they fall and how we record on Saturdays, we really have a very small window to get that in so we can actually watch football. And so it just didn't work out. But yeah, we're back now. Lots of news to cover from, the coaching carousel that happens right after the regular season ends to some brief playoff runs that we got to see and what's going on in the playoffs still.
Yeah, and there is so much that we can talk about since our last pod was uploaded. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened, but I do think and again, like in our pre-show meetings, we talked about what we're kind of going to be talking about in this, and we kind of knew where we're going. But obviously the biggest thing is the coaching carousel. We always talk about this every single year. Going into the playoffs, we only had 2 teams that had actually fired their head coach, and we kind of had a feeling about 2 other teams that were realistically, and then we got ourselves an absolute boatload. Again, we knew that the Giants were going to, they had an opening. We knew the Titans had one. We knew the Falcons and the Browns realistically were the only teams that were kind of like a guarantee to fire their coach. Obviously, we saw the Raiders, we saw the Browns, the Cardinals end up firing their head coach on Black Monday. If you don't know what Black Monday is, it's essentially the NFL saying this is the date when coaches start to get fired en masse. Then we ultimately saw the Dolphins fire their head coach a couple days after. And then we started to have some really interesting fires after the first and second weeks of the playoffs. After the first week, we saw the Steelers end up firing Mike Tomlin. Well, okay, Mike Tomlin didn't get fired, but he walked away. I should also...
Yeah, he stepped down.
Yeah, he did step down. I did forget to mention that the Ravens also fired John Harbaugh on the Tuesday after Black Monday. But then we also saw the Buffalo Bills go out there and fire Sean McDermott after this latest round of divisional weekend. And none of these firings from these teams felt that crazy. Again, you looked at I'm obviously not talking about the Giants and the Titans. Look at the Dolphins. That team had been an utter mess this season, and while I do think McDaniels is a good coach, I think he will become a head coach again as early as next season. It's one of those things where it was time for everyone to kind of move on. With the Ravens, you look at that and go, that was time for both of those parties to move on. John Harbaugh with 18 years of experience. You have seen that guy for years in your division, and it was one of those things where it was like, yeah, it was time. Obviously, the Steelers with Mike Tomlin stepping down. This has been a move that I have had to slowly try to convince you over these last couple of years. But I think even going into last season, you're like, it's time for the Steelers to move on from Tomlin. It's time to finally make that move. And one of the things that I know you stated to me so many times was it's not going to be the Steelers firing Tomlin. It's going to be the Steelers or Tomlin stepping back from the Steelers. And you were correct.
Yeah, and I was all for it. Like, when his last contract came up, I did not want them renewing him. I wanted them to start fresh. And once they renewed him, it was like, okay, well, here we go again.
Yeah.
No.
Obviously, the Buffalo Bills. I think that was maybe a little bit more of a shock because how do you fire your head coach after your quarterback plays such a bad game? But then you also watched in that game the defense, which is the side of the ball that the head coach specialized in, take so many dumb penalties and just play so poorly over these last couple of seasons, and particularly in that game. So it was time. The Browns, that job was a dumpster fire. It still remains a dumpster fire. We will have a lot of comments on the Browns. The Raiders, it was kind of same situation, but you had a coach in Pete Carroll who should have stayed retired and never should have been the head coach of a football team again anyways. And then the Cardinals, that was just a team where you just had a coach that just had no idea what the hell he was doing at the top. And obviously the Falcons job was kind of a similar thing with the Cardinals job. And yeah, throughout these couple of weeks, we have now 6 new hirings. And obviously the first big one was John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh gets booted from the Ravens in what I feel was probably a relatively smart separation between the two, and makes his way over to the Giants, which I personally think is an okay move for the Giants, but I also look at it and went, I'm not 100% sure this is going to be the move that wins this team a Super Bowl, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for that Giants hire for Harbaugh is going to be he has to nail his offensive coordinator hire.
Yeah.
That will be a big thing. If he can get a great offensive coordinator that has the ability to get the best out of Jackson Dart and help him evolve and grow, this could be a great thing for the Giants and for Harbaugh. Because I look at that Ravens firing, and yes, it was necessary, but I am in the camp of the wrong guy left the Ravens. Because I still am a believer that Lamar Jackson is the reason that they cannot advance farther in the playoffs and get it done. He just cannot get it done in the crunch. He's like this era's Tony Romo, essentially, to me.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. Because obviously we saw Harbaugh this year in some critical moments just refuse to use a Hall of Fame player. When you're just sitting back going like, you have a Hall of Fame running back in Derrick Henry, and for just quarters at a time, you just don't use him.
But again, that's where I wonder if that was entirely John Harbaugh or if that was a requirement because Lamar Jackson's on the field and he goes, I want the ball. Because we saw when Lamar Jackson was hurt and Tyler Huntley was in there, Derrick Henry was carrying the workload because there was no Lamar Jackson that had to have the ball in his hands. And so then Derrick Henry was able to shine.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It is one of those things where Lamar Jackson was so happy to get Derrick Henry, and they've worked so well together over these last 2 seasons that I don't know that I would look at Lamar looking at his running back going like, nah, we can't have this guy out there on the field because I need it. Now, I'm not saying that's not a possibility. I just don't know why Lamar would want that because it hurts him.
Yeah, it's just what I've noticed from watching so much Ravens football. You know, Lamar Jackson's not playing. Derrick Henry gets to carry the rock a lot more, and they win. Lamar Jackson plays, and all of a sudden, it's okay. Well, we have to put, Justice or Hill or somebody else out there at running back to block for Lamar Jackson because Derrick Henry's not the strongest running back blocker. He's more of a give me the ball and I'll run through a motherfucker. And so it was just a very unique thing because I even said that before that week 18 matchup with the Steelers and the Ravens. I said, If Lamar Jackson plays, Steelers win and go on. If Tyler Huntley plays, Ravens win and go on.
Yep. Yeah. It's weird. Obviously we'll get on top of the Ravens here in a few moments because they did make a hiring. I think it was 2 days ago that they made their hiring, but just going down.
They have hired their new head coach.
Yeah. We're just going here in order of which teams have ultimately hired their coach at this moment. But yeah, Harbaugh with the Giants. It's one of those things where I could see him stabilizing this team, being there for 4 years, 5 years, then deciding to retire when he's not able to quite get over that hump. Because it's not like Harbaugh is a young man. I think he's 63 years old. So, still got a ton of life in him. And if he wants to coach for the next 15 years, he probably could. But it is one of those things where there was one of those things that you said already that is the key factor in this for me is he needs to nail the offensive coordinator. Now, everything that I've heard, he's basically just taking Todd Monken, the Ravens OC, and then bringing him over, which, again, I think is a good move. The problem is with Todd Monken, if he goes in there, has a really, really good season with Jackson Dart and the rest of the gang for that offense, he's going to be gone next year because he was already a top candidate in last year for trying to get that head coaching job. The Ravens had a little bit of struggles this year on offense. And he's still a guy that could potentially get a head coaching job this cycle, but a little bit more unlikely after the way that the Ravens finished. But this is a guy that has already interviewed this season, is going to continue. Going into next season, if the Giants have a good year on offense, he's getting hired. So boom, you're immediately going to have to try to find that next good offensive coordinator. And if you've watched this channel before, you know how adamant I am. When you have a young team and a young quarterback, the worst thing you can do with that quarterback is to have him learn a new offense every year or every other year. But it's going to be something where I think the Giants ultimately stabilize a little bit more as opposed to what they have been the last few seasons.
Yeah. No, John Harbaugh will be a calming presence there. Whether he nails that OC hire or not, the team will still be better. It's just the right offensive coordinator can bring this Giants team from where they've been to immediately a playoff contender, I think.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Because they have the talent there when it comes to Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart and Tyrone Tracy Jr. Can't forget Malik Neighbors, and presumably they should use early draft picks this year to draft another star on offense for Jackson Dart.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see how this Giants team operates this offseason, because you could very easily see a turnaround like what we saw with the Bears this year, like what we saw with the Jags this season. It could be really, really interesting to see where they go. Ultimately, the next team that made a coaching decision was the Atlanta Falcons when they hired Kevin Stefanski. And this is a move that I like, man. I like this move for the Falcons because it just kind of felt like with Stefanski there with the Cleveland Browns that he's coaching the Cleveland Browns and he kind of has his hand tied. I don't think he liked the situation at quarterback that he had his entirety of being with the Browns. I don't think he wanted to really coach Baker Mayfield. Obviously, the reason that I say that is because it's now coming to light that those two do not have a good relationship. And Baker even made some posts basically blasting Kevin Stefanski. But I don't think Kevin Stefanski wanted Deshaun Watson. I don't think he wanted either of the two quarterbacks that they drafted this year in Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. This is a guy that has won 2 Coach of the Years with the Cleveland Browns, won a playoff game with the Cleveland Browns, and they just continued to just do very, very, very dumb things. And now he goes over to the Falcons. Granted, the Falcons have not been the best organization for when it comes to bringing in the proper players or the proper coaches or the quarterbacks. They have a weird situation to deal with their quarterbacks as well, with Kirk Cousins making as much money as he is, and then Michael Penix also coming in now as a third-year player with essentially no playing time in his NFL career due to his rookie season not really playing much, and then this year due to injuries. So it's one of those things where he's going to have to figure that out, but he has a plethora of weapons to work with in Kyle Pitts. Well, Kyle Pitts actually still might go to free agency because he is a free agent. But you have Bijan Robinson, who's one of the best backs. We know what Stefanski does when he has an elite back. Again, he had Nick Chubb for a lot of years, and Bijan is better than Nick Chubb. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this team operates. They should be better next year with Stefanski at head coach, and they might actually be pushing for that division title next season.
I mean, they were better down the stretch at the end of this year, even because the start of the season, every week it was we don't know what this Falcons team is. They win a week, they lose a week. It's back and forth. It was messy, but they started to lock in near the end of the season as Kirk Cousins got comfortable after a few weeks behind the helm. And I said it to you that last week. I was like, if we were 3 weeks back and this Falcons team was playing like this, and they still had 3 more games, they win this division.
Yeah.
And they would have. So Kevin Stefanski being there is going to be a great thing. I cannot wait to watch both of the Bucks Falcons games next year because Baker Mayfield, like you said, already came out and was firing shots. You can't wait to see him twice a year. I think those are going to both be career days for Baker Mayfield, just putting up numbers and just staring daggers at Kevin Stefanski going, yeah, you failed with me, buddy.
This is another thing that I also want to talk about is some of the hatred and rivalry that's starting to come back to the NFL. Obviously, I think we'll probably chat about that after these coaches because I do think it's an interesting point. But yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch that matchup twice a year. Ultimately, our third head coach that was hired kind of helps my Chicago Bears out a little bit, where the Dolphins hiring the Packers' former defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley to be their new head coach. This is just one of those moves where I'm like, sure, for both sides. Yep. I don't think it's going to really matter. I think both sides are going to be ended up parting ways in 3 or 4 years because Hafley, unfortunately for him, he kind of has an impossible task walking in for him, where he's a defensive-minded guy, a very, very defensive-minded guy, comes in with a team that was very offensive-heavy, and unfortunately, their offense is an absolute shamble right now, where you have to figure out what you're going to do with Tua. For by all accounts, Tua is going to be leaving the team, but you have to figure out how he's going to be leaving the team, whether that's cutting him and paying him an absurd amount of money or trading him away to some unwise, unintelligent team. And then needing to figure out what you're going to do at quarterback, what you're going to do at offensive coordinator. This Dolphins team, they're in just such a mess right now where I think it was kind of whoever takes this job is kind of already on the chopping block, but just unfortunately they're 3 years, it's going to be 3 years down the line.
Yeah, this hire to me felt like a rebuild, retool kind of move where they looked at it, and the Dolphins defense was abysmal last year. And they look at this and they go, in our division, we've got the Patriots to contend with, we've got the Bills to contend with, and so that's Drake May, that's Josh Allen, twice a year each. And they saw what the Patriots did, bringing Mike Vrabel, a very defensive-minded guy, and going, oh, hey, like he's able to get a win away from the Bills that way. Maybe if we can clean up our defense and instill that calmness, that presence again in Miami, and then from there, that's something to build on. You know, if we're able to hang around in games because our defense is keeping us in it, then we can look towards the future on offense, whether that is just, like you said, moving away from Tua, bringing in a guy like Quinn Ewers, who you drafted last year, and going, look, all we want you to do is basically mirror what a guy like Jacoby Brissett does, just manage the game. Don't turn it over. Don't make mistakes. Just give the defense some time to breathe. Try to put up 3 points if he can, and we'll go from there. And so it makes sense for the Dolphins. They really did need to figure out the defensive side of the ball. And with the defensive coordinator options that were out there, most of them are in positions where they already have good teams. And so the only way you were really going to get them on your team was to give them that head coaching position.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a Jeff Hafley or a Brian Flores. I know that is messy history, but that's just one of the DCs that's out there, or a Chris Shula. They're not going to come over to be a DC for Miami when they're already defensive coordinators elsewhere. So they had to give a defensive coordinator a head coach job if they wanted to just calm the noise in that Miami Dolphins locker room. And so I think this, as much as we talk about it's an offensive league, all head coaches should be OCs now, this makes sense to me for the Dolphins because it was such a dysfunctional mess. They needed to get things right.
Yeah, the other thing that I look at with this Dolphins hire is it feels like they're looking at they're going on this pendulum of where it was, okay, we're hiring Jeff Hafley, this leader of men, defensive-minded guy that's just going to take our team to that next level, because we had the offensive mastermind and it didn't work out. But we talked about what happened last time where it was, we're firing Brian Flores because he's this defensive mastermind, try to be this leader of men type. And you know, it's just not working out. We need that mastermind OC to help us with our young quarterback. And then when they fired Adam Gase, who was the head coach before that, it was, we need to bring in Brian Flores because Adam Gase, this offensive mastermind guy, just wasn't that good. So we need a leader of men. It's literally they're just going back and forth. And looking at the list of coaches and how they've done, Adam Gase, when he was there in those 3 years, made the playoffs once, had a relatively good record with the team, 23-25. I mean, that's not great, but it's not bad. You bring in Brian Flores, no playoff appearances, 24-25, so essentially the exact same as Adam Gase. Then you bring in Mike McDaniel, 35-33 and 2 playoff berths in 4 seasons. So I look at that and I go, maybe a little bit of an overcorrection. We'll ultimately see how that goes, but this is just one of those teams, in my opinion, that is, they just keep going back and forth. And as someone who has seen my team do the exact same thing over these last couple of cycles, I go, I don't know if it necessarily works. And
it doesn't work, but it makes sense, because that's actually what I was going to use as an example, was your team. And that was what they did for the longest time. It was, this didn't work out, let's try the other way.
Yep.
Oh shit, this didn't work out, let's try the other way. And really, that's what you tend to see with most teams until that gem lands in their lap, which there aren't a ton of those, and that's what it was with the Bears. And then all of a sudden, it so happened that Matt Eberflus was on his way out just as Ben Johnson was available. And that too was an overcorrect the other way. We went from a defensive mind to an offensive mind, but this one worked.
Yeah.
And so that really is, and sort of what I mean with Miami. Miami doing this right now, they get that defensive mind in there. Maybe that shores up the defense a bit. Maybe they get some good draft picks in, and then that next coaching hire, maybe that's the guy that gets them up there to be competitive with the Patriots, the Bills, whatever.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what Hafley does with this team. Like I said, Hafley was an amazing defensive coordinator. He was probably one of the very best this season in the NFL. I'm ecstatic to see he is no longer with the Packers because that hurts them. Obviously, if the Packers end up hiring Al Harris away from the Bears, I'd be pretty pissed off about that, but I don't think that's going to happen. But the next hiring ultimately happened to be Robert Saleh is now the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And I looked at that and I went, I love the coach as a human being and what he does. He is the worst hire that you could have made for that team. Robert Saleh is a great coach. I think he's a good head coach, but he was wrong for the Titans. And the reason that I say that is because you have Cam Ward, who showed a lot of the reasons of why he was drafted first overall. But the problem was he had nothing. He had no one. Stealing a line from Daniel Jeremiah, he didn't say this about the Titans this year, but he said it about previous teams. The Titans are 15 players away from being 15 players away. I am concerned that Robert Saleh, even though he's a good head coach, and I think he is a good head coach, he just happened to be the coach of the Jets, that going to this situation is the Titans basically saying, well, we had Mike Vrabel. Let's just get the balder, slightly more colored version of Mike Vrabel that happens to be not as good as Mike Vrabel. And the other question was, is he good at developing quarterbacks? Well, let's look at the last time that he was the head coach with Jets. Came in to kind of help Sam Darnold. Nope, that didn't work out. Drafts a quarterback in what I think we can consider probably one of the worst quarterback drafts in the last 15 years. Zach Wilson, terrible. Has Aaron Rodgers, terrible. I know people are going to say, well, that's just the New York Jets stink. Probably, but the track record isn't good with him with quarterbacks. And so if you're the Tennessee Titans, again, we look at this exact same thing. If Cam Ward and the Titans offense goes off next year, well, guess what? Robert Saleh is going to be losing his OC. Cam Ward's going to have to learn his third offense in 3 years as a pro quarterback, fourth offense in 4 years, fifth offense in 5 years. So it's one of those things that is just not a recipe for success. And again, Saleh, great coach, wrong team.
Yeah, just wrong situation for that team. 5 years down the road when the team is built up, Saleh, great coach option for the Titans. But like you said, it's development time right now, and Saleh is not that. This, again, it's the same thing as I was saying with the Miami Dolphins hire. It almost feels like they bring him in and they go, okay, look, we're not going to be great, but maybe we can steal a game here or there from the Texans or the Jags or the Colts. It really feels like, much like with the Dolphins, this is wholly focused on divisional football. They're looking within their division and going, look, we're at the bottom. We need to build up. Let's start with the defense, go from there. And let's try to win some games within our own division and make it so we're competitive here before we even look out to the wider AFC.
Yeah. I talked a little bit earlier about how we're going to see Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski in the same division. This is one of the other things that is going to be really interesting, because Robert Saleh and Liam Cohen, after the 49ers and Jags played this season, got into a little bit of an altercation at the end of that game where both teams had to have other coaches pull them away from each other. So we get to see that twice a year, which is going to be really, really fun and interesting. Next hire ultimately was the Baltimore Ravens, where they ended up hiring Jesse Minter. Again, Minter coming into this cycle from the coaches that weren't previously on other teams. He was kind of the hot name coming from the Chargers as a defensive coordinator. We knew he was going to get a job this cycle. He was just one of those guys that everyone kind of talked about. I know for yourself, you were really worried that this is exactly where the Steelers were going to go, because, a young head coach still in his 30s from the defensive side of the ball. It kind of felt like the Steelers' MO for the way that they like to hire coaches. But for you, ultimately lands with the Baltimore Ravens, and I don't know how to feel about this, because he is a good coach. I just don't know how well it's gonna ultimately work out.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I'm dislike the Ravens, but the Steelers rejected Jesse Minter. He came in for an interview and they were like, yeah, no, never mind, no thanks, we're not interested. And so then he ends up going to the Ravens. I do think a defensive-minded head coach is the right move for the Ravens right now, because as I said earlier, it almost feels like Lamar Jackson doesn't want to get out of the way. And so having an offensive mind that he's going to butt heads with and go, no, I want to do things this way, I don't care how you want to do it, hurts that team. Having the defensive guy there, so he's going to be focusing on that defense. He'll bring in an OC, and basically that OC will probably be sat down and go, look, you are the play caller here until Lamar Jackson says no. I want to do this instead. And then
Yeah.
you're going to be doing that instead, whether you like it or not. And that's really what this feels like, is it's Jesse Minter is running the team and the defense. Lamar Jackson is running the offense.
Which I don't think is ever a smart strategy.
I mean, it's not in the league now, but if you remember like 15, 20 years ago, that was kind of the norm. You would have an OC in there, but a lot of the quarterbacks were really running their own show. They were able to read defenses on the fly. They were able to make adjustments at the line. We don't see that as much anymore. Now it falls to the coaches to make those moves. Maybe this is something where Lamar Jackson was like, no, I want to be that old school guy. I want to be, the mobile Peyton Manning, the mobile Tom Brady. I can do this. I can make those decisions. I don't think he can, but I feel like that might be what this situation was for Baltimore. And I don't dislike the hire.
I'm not saying
I
I
love it
dislike
because
the
I
hire.
don't think it's going to work, but I also like it because I think it's a smart move for the Ravens to do. Rather than bring somebody in who could potentially butt heads with Lamar Jackson, and then you have to make that decision of, oh, do we let this coach go and have to pay out the remainder of his contract, or do we have to trade Lamar Jackson away? So defensive mind made more sense for the Ravens just to create fewer conflicts.
Yep. And I'm not saying that I dislike the hire of Jesse Minter. I view him as potentially being on a similar arc to a Mike McDonald with Seattle. Again, this is a defensive genius who's on the younger side, who's going to come in and just kind of be a leader of men and stabilize this unit. And I have stated for the last 6 years that you can't win in the NFL with a defensive minded guy.
Mhm.
Now, we might see a difference this year because obviously Mike Vrabel, and then you also have Mike McDonald also in that conversation. If one of those guys wins, if the Patriots win, they're not going to be ever losing their offensive coordinator, because no one in their right mind is hiring Josh McDaniels away from the Patriots to be their head coach. We've seen what he's done with Denver. We've seen what he's done with the Raiders. He's locked in. That's the best case scenario that you can have for your team. However, with McDonald, who looks like he has the hottest team in the NFL right now, he's losing his OC. Kubiak is going. And
Oh, yeah.
whoever hires Kubiak, Raiders probably, you're losing your number one play caller. You have to hope that you strike lightning in a bottle twice. Someone who can come in and get the offense humming the way that it's supposed to be. And this is where we always come to this issue. Now, everyone is having to learn a brand new offense. We always hear teams say, oh, well, we're hiring internally, so that way we're not going to have that much change. It's still a lot of change because there's going to be guys that are coming in trying to change verbiage. Maybe not necessarily change verbiage, but change the way things are done. It's such a gamble. It is such a gamble. And that's kind of what I feel like Jesse Minter is going to be, where he's probably going to nail one or two of these offensive coordinator hires over his head coaching career with the Ravens. But it's going to be a situation where it's, oh, great, this guy got hired away. Oh, great, this guy sucked. I have to fire him. Ah, this guy worked out. Now he got hired away. Ah, this next guy I hired. Like, we talk about Nick Sirianni being an offensive-minded guy, having this exact problem with the Eagles, where every single year that he's been the head coach of the Eagles, he has a different play caller, and that's what I feel is going to happen with Seattle. Because if you remember, Seattle last year, they have a different offensive coordinator to this year. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator going into next year. Whether it's good or bad, that's too much change. And finally, the news that ultimately dropped today. Your Pittsburgh Steelers have made a hiring, and they hired Mike McCarthy.
Yep, that they did. So it's just same thing as it's going to be. There's still a chance they could still get one or two other decent pieces in there to go with Mike McCarthy. I'd like to see the contract details. They haven't been released yet, and so we don't know, is it a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal? I don't really care how much he's getting paid. That doesn't matter to me. I want to know how long they think he's going to be there, because Mike McCarthy's not a young man. This is very outside of what the Steelers usually do for their head coach hire.
Yeah.
They have not hired a former head coach into their head coaching role ever before in the last 65, 70 years, whatever it is.
Yeah, and Mike McCarthy is 62 years old. So going
and
opposite
so
of what we've seen before in these last three hires.
This is my hope here, you know. I had a feeling this was what was going to happen. It was down to, I looked at it and it was either going to be Mike McCarthy because they're terrified of the quarterback position and they want to bring Aaron Rodgers back. So guaranteed with Mike McCarthy hiring, we will see Aaron Rodgers sign a new contract with the Steelers. That is without question to me. That was the only reason Mike McCarthy was hired, though. That's it. They didn't hire him for his, you know, coaching acumen or the fact that he can develop quarterbacks or that he can turn teams around and win playoff games. None of that. They hired him because Aaron Rodgers said the only coach he would play for in Pittsburgh other than Mike T was Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened there. My hope is that maybe this is a short-term plan to bring in Aaron Rodgers again, let Will Howard learn for another year behind him, which I do like. I do like that part of it. I want them to nail that offensive coordinator hire, though, to the point where they look at it, they get one of those young guys, and they go, you are the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers when Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers are done burning this ship down.
Yeah.
Essentially. And for me, I said to you this week, like, my ideal guy, I've been preaching for over a year. I wanted Joe Brady. I knew that wasn't happening as soon as this coaching cycle started because I'm watching Joe Brady interview with the Ravens and the Raiders and the Cardinals and the Falcons and everybody else, and not a sniff with the Steelers. So I'm like, okay, they don't want Joe Brady, or Joe Brady doesn't want to be here. That's out. That's done. Once that happened, I looked at it and I went, it's going to be Chris Shula. As much as I hate it, it's going to be Chris Shula. The only thing I could hope for there was that his buddy, Nate Steelhouse, who calls he's the passing game coordinator for the Rams, would look at that and go, okay, we're going to go together. You run the defense, I run the offense. We can do this as a tandem, as a team, and neither of us has to get hired away elsewhere. You know, that was my hope, was that was what was going to happen. Because we've seen it happen before where, you know, guys get into a spot with a coach they really love and it works, they gel, there's no animosity, there's no conflict. Why would you leave? You know, other than more money. That is really the only reason. And I could see the Pittsburgh Steelers throwing a little more money there to keep him around. They've done it before to try and keep OCs. So that was my hope. Now, looking at it, I'm going, I would still love to see Nate Steelhouse come over. Maybe he comes over as the OC and takes over that role in 2 years, if they can keep him that long. That is the concern, because going into next season, if the Steelers do really well, he's going to probably get a head coach job. But, as I've said, Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, I don't see the Steelers doing great. And so if they can get Steelhouse in the building, then maybe other teams start to overlook him because they look at the Steelers offense and they don't see Nate, they see Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. And so he's sort of in the shadows. That is my hope. I don't know what they're going to do on the defensive side of the ball. I know Terrell Austin has been taking interviews elsewhere. I don't see them retaining him under Mike McCarthy. I also said to you last week that the guy I would love to see, just to keep that, you know, Steelers spirit, that Steelers football vibe alive, is Larry Foote, who was a linebacker for this Pittsburgh Steelers team for many years. And he was one of those smash mouth guys. He was part of the crew that created the player safety initiative. But I've been seeing what he's doing with the linebacker crew in Tampa Bay, and holy fuck, he has been doing just such great work that I would love to see him get a coach, like a DC job, and do it in Pittsburgh. That is who I would like to see come in as the defensive coordinator to shore out this offense behind Mike McCarthy and what I hope is Nate Steelhouse. I don't know though, man. I looked at that and I saw Mike McCarthy and I was like, well, at least I don't have to worry about caring about Steelers football for at least a year, probably 2. So at least I don't have NFL stress to worry about for the next couple seasons. I can just sort of go, they're going to lose this game. I'm going to do something else today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been sitting back saying that I've been very critical of the Steelers the last couple of years, mainly because I just look at it, and for me, the biggest curse that a sports team could have is mediocrity, whether it's slightly good mediocrity or the slightly worse version of slightly bad mediocrity. But that is the curse of any sports team, is just constantly riding the middle. And the Steelers have been that for 10 years, just riding that middle. And, no, granted, they've had some seasons in there where they've been right up there. But then once the playoff starts, it goes right back to that middle ground. And you go like, oh, wow. I don't know why they thought Mike McCarthy was going to be someone that jumps in and fixes that problem. And again, obviously, we know the reason why. But it's one of those things, I just look at the Steelers and go, why do you want the guy who played bad football in a playoff game, didn't look like he gave your team a single hope or a shot in that playoff game against the Texans defense? He's a year older now, so he's going to be slower, less arm talent, and a coach that he already wanted fired and away from him in the past. I just sit back and I go, because the second that I saw that, it was 15 minutes before we jumped on, I just texted you, I'm so sorry, man. Because we all know what's going to happen with this. It's just going to be another year of Steelers football that is going to be, okay, you have a good defense. You have Aaron Rodgers making a few plays, but he's probably going to get injured at some point in the season. He's going to have this team now with Mike McCarthy, who is going to have them win 10 games, and they're just going to get blown out in the playoff game yet again. Somehow the Steelers went from Mike Tomlin doing just that to now getting the slightly worse offensive version of Mike Tomlin. And I just go like, I would have respected the move of Chris Shula more than Mike Tomlin, because at least then you're staying true to your guns at that point, hiring the young defensive-minded guy to try to lead that team for years and years and years. I don't think it would have worked, but at least I would have respected it, going like, this is what the Steelers organization does. This is what has been proven to succeed for this organization. But now I'm just like, you're just doing the same thing, guys. You're doing the same thing, just slightly shittier.
Yeah. Okay, so you know me. I try to find the silver linings. I try to find the positives in things. I do see positives in this. You said, the worst thing for a professional sports franchise is mediocrity. That is the worst curse they can have. I think that is true unless you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. The worst curse that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had is their unchangeability. The fact that they have done the exact same thing for 60 plus years. And going into this cycle, even before this cycle, going into last year's cycle, when everybody was like, get rid of Mike Tomlin, everybody was like, well, what are they going to do? They're just going to do the same thing. They're going to find a young, defensive-minded guy, take over the team. He'll run the team for the next 20 plus years. For me, I look at this and I go, this is them half breaking that mold. They're going into it going, okay, look, we're not going to do what you all thought. We're not going to do what we've done for the last 60 years. And what's going to happen is either it's going to work or it's going to blow up in their faces. And they're going to go, see, look what happens when we don't do things the way Steelers football does things. And they're going to go out and they're going to then hire whoever the hot young DC is, hot young linebackers coach is, and then they just restart. That's what this is their way of justifying that next young defensive-minded hire that runs things for the next quarter century. That I feel like is Mike McCarthy is essentially the scapegoat. Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers. They're bringing these two guys in going, look, you guys are either going to retire together as NFL and Packers / Steelers legends because you came in here and you won this team another Super Bowl, or you are both going to be booed out of this city so badly that it taints both of your legacies, and the only city that then loves you after that will be Green Bay.
We all know, fuck Green Bay.
Exactly, fuck Green Bay. But that really is what this feels like, is the Rooney family going, all right, you guys want to play this game, here, win us a Super Bowl, or enjoy the hatred that you are going to get from this fan base. Because if we get to week 7 and this team looks the exact same as it did this year, and you don't know what you're getting, we're going to hear so many boos. We're going to hear fire Rodgers. We're going to hear fire McCarthy. And I don't know if those guys have thick enough skin to handle that in the same way that Mike Tomlin was able to.
Yeah. Now, you did say that you can find some of these silver linings in this.
Mm-hmm.
The silver lining that I have with this is the best play caller that the Steelers have had on offense in 15 years.
Since Bruce Arians.
Yeah. So
yeah.
When did Bruce Arians leave? Because early
2007 or 8, I think, right after they won that Super Bowl. When Arians.
So this is the best offensive play caller that the Steelers have had since Bruce Arians.
Yep.
But with that being said, it's Mike McCarthy, so you're getting slightly above average offensive play calling. There's my silver lining.
It's better than Matt Canada. It's better than Arthur Smith. So that's great. But you also have a 42-year-old quarterback.
Yeah. So I did read a tweet that.
But that's what I mean. That's sort of my silver lining, is these two guys are either going to get it done, which whoop-de-doo, I don't really give a fuck. But if they crash and burn, as long as they develop Will Howard behind that, I'm not that concerned. Because if we can get a good coach after Mike McCarthy and we have Will Howard, I said it last year, I wanted Mason Rudolph. Going into this cycle, which coaches I wanted. I said it. I wanted Nate Steelhouse. I would have made him the head coach if that's what it took to get him to come over, even though he's just a passing game guy at this point. I don't care. He was the one I wanted after I saw Joe Brady was a no-go for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted Will Howard to have a shot this year, because I look at him, I look at what he did in college, I look at how he performed up till that injury in preseason and training camp, and I saw good things out of a 6th-round pick. Hell, I sent you a post. You put his stats side by side with, from his final year with Fernando Mendoza, who is going to go number 1 overall this year. They are nearly identical. They both won a national championship. They are. The stats are nearly identical. Yes, different teams, different coaching staffs, all of that. But the talent and the football knowledge is there for Will Howard. I think he deserves to have a shot. The Steelers have not been willing to do that since Ben Roethlisberger. Mm-hmm. They give a guy the smallest little leash, and as soon as he starts fucking up, they go, oh, no, we're going to bring in Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or Aaron Rodgers. We're bringing in somebody else instead of you because it's not working. And I really wanted to see a true full season out of a under 25-year-old quarterback that I think was good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Will Howard should be the starting quarterback this year, just for, if any reason at all, it gives you a better chance at a lower pick. As you well know, I don't have a lot of high expectations for Will Howard. I think him and Mendoza, the stats might be similar, but those are two drastically different situations. It's one of those things where you have a franchise quarterback in Mendoza who just maybe didn't have all of the offensive powerhouse, versus a guy that literally has NFL draft pick, NFL draft pick, NFL draft pick on all of the lines and all of the weapons that he has, and not just being like, they're gonna be drafted in the NFL, but like first round, like these guys are NFL talents already. While Mendoza great coaching, great situation, has players that are going to be drafted but aren't at that level. But I do agree. I think Will Howard needs to be the starting quarterback this year because fuck it, why not? See what the kid has. You drafted him.
Right.
He's probably not going to be any worse than what you have. Like, if he's worse than Aaron Rodgers, then oh no, you have a top 10 pick for the first time since you've drafted Ben Roethlisberger. Now, I know they ended up having a top 10 pick, but they traded up to get that guy. I think that was what, Devin Bush?
What was that?
The last time the Steelers had a top 10 pick, they traded up to get what? It was what, Devin Bush?
The last time they had top 10, that was trading up to get Devin Bush, I think.
Yeah.
And that was to the 10 pick.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, prior to that, the last time they had a top 10 pick was the season before they drafted Ben Roethlisberger, I do believe. They had a 5-win season, and they had like the 8th or...
Was Ben Roethlisberger not like the 6th pick or something like that? I'm pretty sure
Roethlisberger was the 11th pick, I believe.
Was he? I thought he was higher than that.
Yeah, because it was the same year with Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning, and so he actually slipped a little bit further down. But he was not even a top 10 pick.
I feel like he was, though. Again, I'm not... So he was the 11th pick. Well, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. But yeah, we do have 4 more coaches that need to be hired. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Arizona Cardinals, and then who's ever forced to be the Cleveland Browns head coach, because whatever that team is doing right now, because again, I read you a tweet yesterday. The Cleveland Browns are forcing their candidates to do homework, to write essays for them, write personality tests for them, because their analytics say these are what makes good coaches. And here's the thing. If I was a head coach candidate and I'm interviewing for the Browns, and I sit down going, this team is a fucking mess. And let's just say I have real interest because I want to be a head coach and I think I could be the guy. I sit down and they say, all right, well, we need you to write this personality test for us. You need me to do what? You need me to write a personality test? Oh yeah, so it's a way that we can get to know you better. Well, isn't that what the whole point of the interview is? Yeah, but we want you to write it down. Not to steal a line from Kurt Signetti here, guys. Google me. Like,
yeah. Well, 3 guys have already said that to them over this. You know, including Chris Shula and Mike McDaniels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just look at that and I go, how stupid of an organization do you have to be? Again, you have to realize that people look at, like, I think every team has to understand what they look like on the outside. I always believe that whenever you go into a head coaching cycle, you need to bring someone from the outside who is in the NFL to be able to sit you down and say, listen, this is what the outside perception of you is. And the Bears knew that last year in their cycling, in their process. It was, listen, we've always been talked about as a team that nickels and dimes their coaches, that doesn't want this or that. And it was, you know, it took Kevin Warren coming in basically saying, listen, I know I'm the team's president, but I am an outsider in terms of what has been here for the last few years. This is the perception of this team. We need to change it. And the Browns are just looking at it going like, oh, this is the perception of our team. Let's make it somehow worse.
Yep. What I always say about the Browns, man, they find ways to make themselves worse. And it gets funnier with them, too.
Yeah.
Because out of the remaining jobs that there are for head coaching openings, the Browns are the only ones that, as of today, they can't even hire a head coach.
Yeah.
They have not satisfied the Rooney Rule yet. And so they cannot even their own defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, they cannot hire him as their head coach because they have not satisfied the Rooney Rule. So who knows? He may end up finding another job somewhere else still at some point, because it's looking more and more like that is really going to be their only option for a head coach. Other coaches have started taking coordinator jobs, Mike McDaniels, because they're like, yeah, Browns is the only one that's really offering me a head coach spot, and no thank you. And so
Yeah.
he's going to go be the OC for Harbaugh in LA for the Chargers,
Well,
which is
yeah.
a great landing spot for McDaniel. But the Browns are absolutely screwing themselves because they're going to end up in a position where they might not even be able to get a head coach in there before the draft if they don't satisfy this Rooney Rule soon. Because once all these guys start getting hired, who are you going to bring in for those interviews to satisfy that rule then? You're going to have to start just interviewing random college coaches that fit the profile to get that done. And with all the negative press and negative news coming out, it would not shock me to have a high percentage of those coaches, if not all, get that phone call and go, no, thank you. I don't even want to come in for an interview. And what do you do then?
Yeah.
When even the minorities do not want to come and interview for your team, for your position, they're going to have to interview Coach Prime just to try to get themselves to that satisfaction point.
Yeah. I always look at the Rooney Rule and state, if you are a team hiring in the cycle, your first two interviews should be interviews that satisfy the Rooney Rule.
Yep.
Now, I understand a lot of the talk around that is, well, then all you're doing is just trying to get those out of the way so you can hire whoever you want. I go, well, yeah, that should be the point. Obviously, still keep everyone as a legitimate candidate, but you look at this year, the Giants were the first team to hire a head coach. Pretty much their first interview satisfied the Rooney Rule. It was, we got out there, we did what we needed to do, and we got that situation done. Look at what the Patriots did last year. The Patriots fired their head coach on Black Monday. The next day, they had two minority coaches in because they knew that they wanted Mike Vrabel. That is the coach that they wanted. So they basically did these sham interviews, got them out of the way, and then boom, they hired their coach. It's a really shitty thing to do, but that's what you have to do if you want a coach that you want. The Bears last year almost screwed themselves because when the Lions lost in divisional weekend, the Bears have only required one out of the two interviews, and I'm sitting back going like, you need to do the interview. And then an hour after that Lions game was over, I'm sitting back going like, who the fuck are the Bears going to interview? They need to do da. An hour later, it was a college coach is coming in for an interview who met the Rooney Rule the next morning, and then the day after, it was, oh yeah, we have announced Ben Johnson as our head coach. So you can get it done really quickly, but the fact that they don't even have one yet is pure insanity at this stage where we are now going to championship weekend and you still haven't met one of those requirements.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like it is shitty that that's the way teams got to do it. Like I respect and understand the Rooney Rule. We want more diversity in the coaching staffs. That's great, but that's it because of the way the rule is slated. That is what teams have to do. You have to interview those guys because we've all been through interviews. You know, everybody has, and you know when you're in there and the connection is there and the vibe is right, and sometimes that deal gets done right away.
Yep.
If you haven't satisfied the Rooney Rule, you can't do that. That's why a lot of teams, I think, do it this way, where it's like, yeah, we're going to get the two out of the way. We're still going to likely interview more later on, but say a Ben Johnson falls into our lap, we have this interview and we go, oh my God, you're exactly who we want. We agree on everything. This is going to be a perfect fit. We've already done our due diligence in terms of any violations we could commit. We can just hire you right now. Whereas the Browns, if that happens to them, they go, okay, well, we got to go quickly schedule a couple of interviews and then we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And in that time, another team could poach that coach away.
Yeah.
You never know. And so it is bizarre to me that the Browns haven't even, like you said, interviewed one candidate.
I look at it like this. Let's just say that Clint Kubiak, who I still think is probably the hottest coach still available, he ends up losing with Seattle tomorrow. The Rams ultimately beat Seattle Seahawks, And then on Monday, he has an interview with the Browns because he goes, you know what? They have pieces there. That defense is so good that I can work
Mm-hmm.
with the offense. I can draft who I want. I can make this team work. I want to be the guy that goes out there and turns the Browns around. Again, you have the smirk on your face because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, it's the Browns. Of like, why would you have want them? This is the guy that just sits back and goes, I don't care about any of that stuff. It's like when Baker Mayfield was drafted. He said, I want to change this team around. It was like when
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Williams went to the Bears. He goes, I know this is where quarterbacks supposedly go to die. I'm not going to die there. I'm going to thrive, and I'm going to change every narrative about that. He goes in there, interviews with the Browns. It goes great. It goes perfect. And the Browns just sit back and go, we really want to hire you. We like you, but we do need to do those interviews. The next day, he goes over to Vegas for that interview, and he goes, you know what? Maybe this is a better situation for me. And the Raiders look at it and go, you know what? We're going to hire you. And then boom, the Browns just lose out on that coach that actually wanted to be there. But it's so absurdly dumb in my opinion. A coach candidate.
Yeah, and that smirk wasn't even because it's the Browns. It was when you said, "Oh, I can draft who I want," because that was like your quarterback is Shadur Sanders, whether you like it or not. You
Here's the
cannot
problem.
draft who you want in Cleveland. They decide who you get to use. We've seen that.
Here's the problem. Is I don't even know if Shador is going to be the starting quarterback for Cleveland because you drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. You still have Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for all I know, the owner just walks up to the coach and just says, well, guess what? It's Deshaun Watson, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, that's going to deter a lot of coaches too, because going in there, and we saw it with Kevin Stefanski. All those years of being good, and he still didn't get to choose who he wanted as a quarterback.
Yeah.
It was still, no, we're trading Baker Mayfield away. You have Deshaun Watson. Oh, he's hurt. Well, here, we'll bring in, I don't know, Joe Flacco. We'll bring in Jacoby Brissett. Here, we'll draft a few guys. You can use them. All guys that he doesn't want. Like, it's a mess. And that's just it. I think a lot of coaches, they're going to interview for that job, be told to take a personality test and go,
excuse me,
you want me to take a personality test so that I can coach Shadur Sanders?
Yeah.
No, I'm good. Just call his dad at this point.
Honestly, it's getting to the point where
Browns,
that's probably what it's going to be.
There's only two that I can see. It's going to be Coach Prime or it's going to be Jim Schwartz. And Jim Schwartz is a great defensive coordinator, but he's one of these guys that falls into that category where I always say some guys should just stay coordinators because it's where they thrive. Jim Schwartz is one of them. Great defensive coordinator. I don't have a ton of faith in him as a head coach.
Yeah, as you well know, I think this is just an absolute shit show of a situation. Still have these 4 hires. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what ultimately happens. A coach that has done basically an entire media tour on how he should try to get a head coach job again. In Matt Nagy, what a situation this guy has gone through. Ever since the playoffs started, has kind of been doing this media tour, basically where Reed has tried to push him out there and trying to get his name. Obviously, he was in the last year of his contract, and so everyone kind of expected Nagy to get that job because the coaching cycle kind of looked kind of trash, and this was before Harbaugh, McDermott came into effect, or Stefanski came into the picture, and it was, okay, well, some team's going to hire Matt Nagy because he does have that head coaching experience, and he's young enough that he can still be there for 15 years if you want him to be. Not only is it not looking like he's going to get a head coaching job, he doesn't even have his job to return to with the Chiefs because the Chiefs looked at this and went, yeah, we're going to rehire Eric Bieniemy as our offensive coordinator. Chicago, can we have him? Bears like, we don't really want you to have him, but there's not anything we can do to stop you. If he says yes, then yes. Which I think it's hilarious that the problem with Eric Bieniemy, he left KC to try to get a head coaching job and show that he's this offensive minded guy, for him to just circle back to just now be the offensive coordinator. But yeah, Matt Nagy is kind of subtly got fired without being fired.
Yep. I mean, that Chiefs offense has not looked great, and you know Matt Nagy very well because you were one of the teams that he tried venturing out as a head coach and it didn't work out for him. And I even said that going into this. I was like, he'd be crazy to try because I don't think he's going to succeed anywhere. And now it really is. It's down to 4 teams left, and he's not the front runner for any of them. He might get saddled with the Cleveland Browns job because nowhere else wants him, and he doesn't have a job available anywhere. That Eric Bieniemy hiring was a little bit disappointing because that was another guy that I was low-key looking at for an OC in Pittsburgh because it's like, run game, we're a run-heavy team. Let's give it a try, see what happens. But, now he's back with the Chiefs, which I think is great for the Chiefs, great for Bieniemy. I think this will get him back on track, and we could see Bieniemy re-entering that head coach discussion in a season or two. I think so. If the Chiefs turn around and they start performing really well, they know they're not going to get Andy Reid. Maybe Bieniemy is then the successor to Andy Reid when Andy Reid retires.
That
right?
would be
we thought
the thing,
maybe it was going to be Matt Nagy, but Reid's still there and Nagy's out, so who knows what happens.
You talk about Nagy potentially being the head coach candidate for the Browns. He might only end up getting the offensive coordinator job for the Browns because, again, if he doesn't have a home here, I could see Nagy potentially try to venture out to college and try to do something there. But to me, it's so funny, just like the media press tours that he's going on, basically talking about what he's going to do and how this was going to be so much different this time, all to wind up not getting a head coaching job during this cycle. Now, again, there's still 4 teams that are available, but if you're Nagy, you're kind of looking at this going, do I really want the Browns job? Do I want the Cardinals job? Because those aren't really that good of options. And let's be honest here, the Buffalo Bills aren't hiring Matt Nagy.
No, but those other 2 jobs are the most interesting spots for Nagy to land. Having Matt Nagy coaching the Buffalo Bills, having to deal with that elephant in the room of they can't beat the Kansas City Chiefs, that's going to be real interesting. And then the other one with the Raiders, it's like, okay, so now Matt Nagy goes over and he's got to face the Chiefs and Andy Reid twice a year. Going to make that rivalry that much more interesting. So those 2 would be really unique hirings. But what's wild about that Buffalo Bills one is I'm hearing very little chatter over who it could be outside of Brian Daboll. That's sort of the only name I've been hearing getting floated around. And I'm like, I get it. He came from Buffalo, but he did not do well in New York with the Giants. He may be one of those guys that is a career coordinator who is going to be better in that role than a head coach. But the fact that we haven't heard any other names around that Bills job really just shines a light on management and the GM and the ownership and what kind of mistakes they have made over the last 5 years to not give Sean McDermott the best opportunity to win.
Well, the most insane thing that I heard from that press conference this week is you're listening to the owner of the team and Brandon Beane, the general manager. I sat back and I said, I think it's time for the Bills to move on from Sean McDermott because it just wasn't working. And I don't believe you can win in the NFL with a defensive-minded coach anymore. And I also said, if you're going to fire McDermott, fire the GM because he's been terrible. Brandon Beane has drafted 0 Pro Bowlers over the last 5 years. He has had a mess at a situation for the wide receivers and has just been genuinely not that good as a GM. We've seen GMs with better teams do more and be fired. And the funniest thing that came out of that press conference was the conversation surrounding Buffalo Bills wide receiver Keon Coleman, where someone just point blank asked Brandon Beane a question about Keon Coleman. The owner steps in and goes, I want this to be very crystal clear. It was the coaching staff that pushed Brandon to draft Keon Coleman. It was never his decision. I'm sure, Brandon might have drafted him, but it was the coaching staff that forced him down this path. I'm sitting back going like, you do realize that this is a player still on your fucking roster.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's still on your team. He's your best offensive weapon, not named James Cook or Josh Allen. Maybe not an idea to just absolutely shit on the best wide receiver your team has right now.
Yep. And if that's what you're going to do and you're shitting on him because that he's not that good, why is that the best wide receiver on your team, Brandon Beane?
Yeah.
You were the one that had the power to change that and find a better wide receiver. There were trade offers out there. There were better wide receivers you could have gotten. I saw there was a trade deal on the table for Jalen Waddle.
Yep.
The only thing the Dolphins wanted was this year's first round pick instead of next year's first round pick.
Yeah.
Done. Jalen Waddle's on that team. The Bills are playing this weekend.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw that too, and I went, that's a move where, because who did they end up drafting last year? It was Maxwell Harrison. Okay, yeah, and it was a 2026. It's like you have the 25th pick this year, 25th or 26th pick this year in this draft. Who are you going to draft? I don't know if a wide receiver at that point is going to be better than Jalen Waddle. So why couldn't you make that? But the funniest thing about that is when the owner stated that it was Brandon Beane being pushed by the coaching staff, he does realize that that year that the Buffalo Bills drafted Keon Coleman, they were a part of this little known TV show called Hard Knocks, where they kind of follow the team around and they kind of have a much deeper inside access. It sure seemed like Brandon Beane really, really wanted to draft Keon Coleman. And I just look at the owner and go, you do realize there's receipts of Beane wanting Coleman and basically stating to people that it's Coleman or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what the... So right now, I look at the Buffalo Bills situation and go, if you are a coaching candidate, yes, you have Josh Allen, but do you want to deal with the headache of everything else that comes with that? And not to say that you also have to deal with the New England Patriots now twice a year as well. Going, if you can't beat the Patriots with Josh Allen twice a year and win this division and take that team to that next level. Like I said about the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills job, is both of these jobs are really attractive because of the quarterback that you have, but the amount of pressure to get it right and have to get it right fast is going to be so high, because whoever gets hired there, if it's just the same thing, then you're going to get fired in 2 years. Yeah. If you are not making that push up to that next level of where it is acceptable in 2 years, you are going to get fired.
Yeah, and the difference between those two jobs is the Ravens have a lot more talent on both sides of the ball all around. The Bills, like you said, it's Josh Allen, it's James Cook, and that's the whole team. That's not just the offense. That's both sides, because the defense in Buffalo is not great. There's some okay players there, but they're not great in that Buffalo defense. And so that's another thing that you got to contend with as the coach coming in there, is you're not just worried about finding a weapon for Josh Allen. You're worried about how do we stop other teams from scoring as well. It's not a super desirable job there in Buffalo, because the only reason they've been as good as they have been is because of those two guys. And if we remember going into last offseason, even James Cook was a question about whether he was still going to be there, because he was frustrated with that team. And we're now seeing comments from Josh Allen as well that he's getting frustrated with this team. We could see in a few years where both of those guys are not even on this Buffalo Bills team.
Yeah, it's... that Buffalo Bills job looks so damn attractive because of what you can do. But then it also goes like, man, do I really want to hitch my wagon up to this ticking time bomb? Because that's what it is. Because it's such a cluster, man. It's going to be so interesting. We have done a lot of talking about the coaching hirings and the cycle that is this time. I can't remember a time where we have had more than a quarter of the league looking for head coaches all in the same cycle. Like, the fact that we've had 10 in this cycle is crazy. I think typically 7 to 8 is what we typically see, but this is like there's a lot of jobs this cycle for what frankly is not a good coach hiring cycle.
No. And I think there was another one just a few years back that had 10 as well. And then prior to that, the biggest one was like all the way back in like 2007 or something like that, if I'm remembering right. But yeah, a lot of openings. And as we said at the start, a few that surprised some, even if they didn't surprise you and I as much, like the Sean McDermott one. We were both sort of looking at that going, if they don't at least make the Super Bowl, I think he's gone. Because I was of the belief that even if they made it to this weekend and they somehow lost in the AFC Championship yet again, I think McDermott still would have been fired, because you look at that and go, there was no Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow to beat you. Why didn't you win again? And so that, and then the Harbaugh firing, I think that surprised some, again, not as much you and I. The Mike Tomlin stepping down one, that one did surprise me. Because I thought with how they did, he was probably just going to run it back again. But you know what? I think him stepping down falls 100% squarely on the shoulders of the fans who live in Pittsburgh and attend those home games regularly. When he heard those fire Tomlin chants, I think that was the moment he decided, win, lose, draw, stadium implodes, I don't care, I'm done at the end of the season. I think that was the moment when he decided, because once he started hearing that, he goes, I don't want to go through a season next year where if it is worse, I'm going to have to listen to this every week. No. And so that one, I think, really does fall squarely on the shoulders of the fans. So if it's bad next year, y'all have yourselves to blame.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Obviously, for both of our teams ended up making the playoffs. And the way that we kind of described it, talking in our pre-show meetings, it was the swift and the exciting. The Steelers going into this one, it was a situation of you're going up against the Texans team that was playing with a lot of momentum and looked like one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And it was like, okay, man, like, sure, the Steelers haven't lost on Monday Night Football in the Mike Tomlin era. You're going into Pittsburgh. This is a really tough environment. The Texans have never won a road playoff game ever in their franchise's history. There's just too much riding for the Steelers to finally get this done. And you're watching CJ Stroud play in that game. You're like, oh man, like, he's really getting that Steelers team the opportunity. And then it was the other side. It was, oh, this Texans defense is that good that the Steelers offense looks pedestrian. They don't even look like a competent NFL team. And again, you got DK Metcalf back after his 2-game suspension, but it's one of those things where even he didn't have himself a good game. He's dropping passes and he just looked bad. And you're just like, yep, we didn't expect, like, I think both of us expected it to be a lower scoring game. But then the Steelers just got absolutely bullied, and probably the second worst defeat in the playoffs this season.
I mean, it was close to start.
It was
a close defensive game, and then the Steelers just gave up. Once the Texans were able to put up a couple of touchdowns, the Steelers just gave up on that one. That Steelers defense gave the offense every opportunity to win that game. So many turnovers, so many defensive stands, great field position, and Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers could not find a way to move the ball. DK Metcalf dropped a pass in the first quarter and they didn't throw it to him again until there were only 3 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did you bring that guy in and pay him so much money? Okay, he dropped a ball in the first quarter. He hasn't played in 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
What did you expect? You know, I think not having Darnell Washington hurt as well. He was a big motivator for that team on offense all season long. Converted a lot of third and longs for them on just impossible plays. So that hurt. But the fact that the offense just came out and did the exact same thing that we've seen every single year since Ben Roethlisberger retired, you're not going to win games that way.
Nope.
I've said that this defense can get them to the playoffs, and did. This defense can keep them in playoffs games. It did. But the offense has to be able to put up points. And we saw flashes of it through the season.
Mm-hmm.
There were games they were scoring 25, 30, 35 points. And I was like, okay, if you do that in the playoffs, we win.
Yep.
Simple as that. And that is what would have happened. If they even could have put up one touchdown before the end of the third quarter, I think the Steelers could have won that game. But they couldn't even score a single touchdown the entire game. And that in itself is like, you don't win football games that way in the playoffs. You don't even win regular season football games that way very often. You know, it's what I expected. So I wasn't really disappointed. It was more just great. Here we go again. Aaron Rodgers no better. Like, when are we going to just do a true proper rebuild?
Yeah. The first, I knew going into that game that the Texans were going to win. I thought the Texans offense had been playing quite well. I knew the Steelers defense was going to give them a little bit of trouble, but how badly CJ Stroud played in that game, it was like, oh, like this is a problem. How bad he played in that Patriots game is to the point now where I'm sitting back looking at CJ Stroud going, this dude probably shouldn't be the starter next year if you're the Texans. Like, you might have to move on from CJ Stroud because it was that bad of playoff performances, and you're like, oh my god, man, like this is not good.
Yeah, those two games, that was a historically bad playoff performance from CJ Stroud. That was one of the worst quarterback performances we have ever seen in the playoffs. The fact that he got 2 games, that speaks to how bad the Steelers' offense was.
Yeah.
Because, again, I said, that defense handed Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers the reins so many times, so many chances to win the game, and they absolutely could do nothing with it. They didn't deserve to win that game. I said that when we were into the third quarter. I was like, the Steelers don't deserve to win this. They might still somehow pull it out because it was still close. You never know. A pick six instead of a touchdown pass, that game changes completely. But that's the sport that we watch. That's the way it goes there. You know, and then like you said, up against the Patriots, same thing. What was it, like 5 turnovers against the Patriots?
Yep.
Just abysmal, because he had 3 or 4 against the Steelers. So almost double-digit turnovers in only 2 playoff games. Not a good look, CJ, but I don't know how much we can put on him. He had to carry that team a lot. Remember what that team was at the start of the year with that horrible offensive line? I think they just started playing so well near the end that we forgot how bad the O-line was. And going up against playoff teams, hungry to go on, it really exposed how bad that O-line was. And it was fast pressures in his face. That's why I think he was throwing up prayers, trying to save his life. And it was a mistake. It was bad decisions. But maybe it was the better of the bad decisions instead of getting absolutely laid out by any number of these defensive players that could have ended his season. You know what I mean? Like, it felt, I don't know.
I know
I
what
don't
you're
like
saying.
how he performed, but I don't want to put it all on CJ Stroud, because that Texans team went further than any of us thought they were going to after 4 weeks of the NFL season. With how bad that O-line was, we all looked at that team and went, this is the drop back year for them, and they still managed to go. You know, it was, I think it was pure luck.
I know what you're saying. I just watched that Patriots game and went, Sure, the O-line's not great,
Hmm.
but CJ lost them that game.
Yep.
Like, obviously, we're gonna have a lot of discussions about CJ Stroud moving on to the future, but yeah, it was one of those things for the Steelers where you got what you needed out of your defense, and then it was just the offense continuing to let yourself down. But my Chicago Bears,
Hmm.
I said coming into this year, I would be satisfied with playoffs. The Bears did more than I ever expected them to do this year because even in my wildest dreams, I didn't think that they were going to win the NFC North. I thought they would be a wild card team that ultimately makes it as maybe like the seventh seed, not the two seed in the NFC.
Hmm.
Then playing the way that they did in that first half against the Green Bay Packers, finding a little bit of momentum in the third quarter, and then doing what they did in that fourth quarter. It was one of those things where that is quite possibly the second greatest comeback in NFL history, only behind the Patriots to the Falcons in
Hmm.
the Super Bowl. Caleb Williams, I think, went into this playoffs with kind of being a 50-50 on how you viewed him, where it's he still plays a little too much hero ball, the completion
Hmm.
percentage, there's some people that are just like we're not ready for him, like to sit back and say like this kid is a superstar. I think that game brought it up to 75-25, where it's 75 like okay, like he's him. Ultimately winning that game was spectacular. And then the game against the Rams, I think 100% of experts at this point are sitting back and saying like, okay, Caleb Williams is a true franchise quarterback. He's going to be an MVP. He's going to win Chicago a Super Bowl. I think everyone's
Hmm.
kind of sat back at this point and gone, the things that he needs to work on are the easiest things for a quarterback to work on.
Yeah.
Beating the Packers that game was one of the best sports moments I've had in my life. I've seen this team go to a Super Bowl. I've seen other teams from my fandom win championships. That game in and of itself, it's sad to say, but that was one of the greatest moments as a sports fan that I've ever had in my life. Again, I had to work on that night when the game ultimately started, so I'm calling a hockey game with the Bears game on in the background, and at one point I have to just close my laptop because the Bears looked so lifeless, so just destined for defeat. I just closed it. I was like, we're losing. I get home. I'm chatting with my family, and I'm just like they're just like, how you doing? And I'm just pissed off because I'm seeing my team yet again lose to the Packers, to me not even watching the game up until the final drive where the Bears ultimately go up and take it, to just sitting back going like, I don't know what to do, almost crying out of just pure joy of finally beating this team. And yeah, it was spectacular.
Yeah, it was a good step for the Bears this year, definitely. There was a lot of drama, a lot of growth, a lot of experience gained by them. That that wild card game though, that concerned me. I'm glad they pulled that win out, but I really, really hope they get that cleaned up going into next year because ultimately, Caleb Williams and the Bears, they had the most come from behind wins this year.
Yep.
And that is not a formula to win a championship. You need
It,
to be a little bit more in command of the games. Like, yeah, it makes for exciting football. It's fun to watch because you're like, oh, we're coming back. We're going to get the win. But, like, you can only do that so many times before the ball bounces the wrong way on you,
yep.
and unfortunately, the more it happens, the more likely each time that's going to be what ends up occurring. Because that wild card game, yeah, like I'm watching it and it's like Packers go and score. Bears do nothing. Packers go and score, and it's like, oh my God, what is happening? How are they letting the Green Bay Packers walk into Soldier Field and do this to them in the playoffs? This can't. This can't happen. And so I was glad to see Ben Johnson keep them calm, essentially, and go, we can come back from this. Because I look back at the past few coaches of the Bears, and if any of them were in that position, that game's done at halftime.
Oh,
Done.
yeah, not
Cooked.
only
Like-
only done, but the Packers win 40-7.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, the Packers keep scoring if any of those other coaches that are there. The fact that Ben Johnson's able to keep them calm and go, look, guys, one drive at a time, one possession at a time, one play at a time. We can't score 21 points on one pass, but we can score 7.
Yeah.
And that's all we need. Because you get that 7, we get the ball back, we do it again. And that's the key with him is he is a very good motivator, and I think him and Caleb Williams are going to be a very good duo going forward. There are some question marks on both sides of the ball for that team. They have to shore up their defensive line. Got to do something there. On the offensive side, there's obviously some drama going on with DJ Moore. They've got to find a way to move on from him because like he wasn't even present for the final team meetings or like the final walkthrough. From what I heard, he just completely abandoned the team after that Rams game.
So it wasn't team meetings or walkthrough, it was media interviews.
Yeah. But so there are definitely some concerns.
Yeah. I'm obviously going to chat about those here in a few minutes, but
yeah, these are concerns that can be remedied through free agency, through the draft, and through training camp where you just solidify what this team is going to be next year. This Bears team next year should take steps forward now. You know, this isn't a situation where you look at a team and go, wow, they had a surge of a year. We expect them to fall back next year. Kind of like what we expected with the Commanders this year from last year, which did happen.
Yeah.
I don't see that with the Bears. The Bears, unfortunately, teams are not going to take them lightly now. I think a lot of times this year, teams looked and went, well, it's the Chicago Bears. You know, they're the bottom dwellers in the NFC North, big whoop, and you surprised a few teams. That's not happening next year. Next year, it's going to be much tighter. It's going to be much harder to get those wins. This team is going to have to be a much more cohesive unit, but you have the right coach to do that. So hopefully things keep trending that way for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of stuff happened. You know, the Rams game, that Rams game was probably one of the best playoff games we've seen so far this year, Bears versus Rams. Like I said, I think Caleb Williams solidified himself as he basically announced to the league, it's like, guess what? I'm going to win an MVP. I'm going to win a Super Bowl. It's just going to be a matter of time. And let's be honest here, the Bears, they deserve to win that game a little bit more than the Rams from what we saw from them. Obviously, there's things that they need to work on. I do think DJ Moore ultimately cost the Bears that game, but that's a conversation that we'll likely have in the upcoming weeks about DJ Moore. Yep. I look at the things that this team just needs to work on is they need to start out hotter, but again, it's a new offensive system in year one. Year one of an offensive system is never the best. You always see it get better and better and better. And yeah, man, like Caleb, if he's not one of the top 3 for favorites for MVP next year, I think it'll be one of the smartest bets to take him at whatever his number is, because he will likely be in conversations all the entirety of next season for that conversation. And you know what? I'm okay with losing to the Rams. The Rams are a great team. They have the MVP of the league. They have the offensive player of the league. If they go on and win the Super Bowl, I can sit back and say, we had them on the ropes the entire season, or for that entire game, back and forth. It was so much fun to watch, and it was an incredible year. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of Bears kind of deniers sit back and say, well, they won so many one-score games. It's just like the Kansas City Chiefs of last year. If you remember, the Kansas City Chiefs won, I'm pretty sure, all of their games in one-score situations. The Bears in one-score games this year were 8-5.
Yeah.
So to me, that's not one team just winning one-score games off of luck. It's a situation of where, yeah, sure, 7 of those one-score games come from behind victories, But
Mhm.
would you rather a team that is able to have 7 comeback victories in a season versus a team that can't? I would much rather have the team that is capable of doing that and been battle tested and is still growing in this system.
Mhm.
And I'm really interested to see what's going to happen. Obviously, I sent you a little video last night of a certain player that is not on the Bears that very much is making it known that he wants to be on the Chicago Bears, and that's Max Crosby. I
Yep.
know for the last few weeks I've been making the jokes of Max Crosby to the Bears, but the video that was posted, he was on a podcast last week, and someone asked him, you know, what were some of the games that you were watching? He's like, man, I was watching that Bears Rams game. Like, I was out with my family, and the way that he's describing that incredible touchdown throw from Caleb Williams, he sounded like he's a fan of the team, and it basically just saying like, I want to be a part of this. And yeah, Ryan Poles, don't fuck it up and somehow get us Max Crosby, whether that's
Yeah.
at the
Yeah. I mean,
expense.
you've been making jokes about it. I haven't been joking about it. I've been flat out saying like DJ Moore needs to be on his way out, and Max Crosby and the Raiders have kind of hit an impasse at this point. This is a best case scenario for both teams.
Yeah,
Max is unhappy. You send him to the Bears. You get DJ Moore and a couple of draft picks back. You immediately have a wide receiver for Fernando Mendoza to pair with Brock Bowers. You have Ashton Genty in the backfield. Your offense is there. Then you can focus all those draft picks on offensive linemen and try to fill that O line out for the Raiders. And then on the Bears side of it, you go, well, we have Luther Burden. We can part ways with DJ Moore because Luther Burden is basically young DJ Moore 2.0. So whoop-de-doo, we don't really lose that much out of this. Yeah, we got to give up a couple of draft picks for it, but our team is made up pretty well right now. That biggest need we have going into this draft is edge rusher. And Max Crosby solves that because you still have Montez Sweat under contract. I mean, who knows? Maybe instead of all those draft picks, you throw Montez Sweat in there instead, and Sweat goes back the other way, and you keep some of your draft picks, and then you can still draft this year, next year, and not have to worry about sending multiple firsts.
yeah.
You know, like there's ways you can get this done. And Ryan Poles, this would probably be the best move he makes in his GM career if he can get a deal like this done to bring Max Crosby to Chicago.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I want Max Crosby on this team. Now again,
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit back and, you know, bank the entire offseason on Max Crosby because again, the biggest problem here is if Max Crosby was a free agency and he was going to hit the open market, I would 100% be sitting back saying he's coming to Chicago. But the problem is that he isn't a free agent. He still has multiple years left on his deal. You're going to have to trade for a guy like that. And unfortunately, in a trade, you need 2 teams to tango. And it could be a situation where the Raiders just go, no, fuck you. We're keeping Max Crosby. It's Tom Brady basically sitting back going, listen here, Chicago, you stole the coach that I wanted for my team. You don't get Max Crosby and go fuck yourself. Sure, you're offering 2 first rounds, but no.
Mhm.
And that's his,
Right, and
petty way of getting back at the Bears.
he could even up the petty and go, no, you know what? I'm going to give him to Brian Flores in Minnesota instead.
Yeah, or Detroit,
No,
and
or I'm
pair
going to trade him to
Aiden,
the Detroit Lions instead.
and give him Aiden Hutchinson and Max Crosby. Just yeah,
Right?
it's
Like, so yeah, there definitely is a fear there. But if I'm the Raiders, pettiness out the window. You can get trade value from Max Crosby at this point. Do not work yourselves into a hole like my Pittsburgh Steelers have done, where TJ Watt's trade value has disappeared.
Yep.
You cannot get the value out of TJ Watt that you could have last year, the year before. Like, no, he's not going to get you that anymore. So that's not even an option for my team to go and be like, oh, we'll trade you TJ Watt for DJ Moore, because the Bears will laugh and go, okay, what else are you giving us as well as TJ Watt to get DJ Moore? Because that is how far the value for Watt has fallen. Max Crosby still has immense trade value. The Raiders,
I think you're maybe devaluing TJ Watt a little bit more and overvaluing what DJ Moore is, because there's been a lot of chat over this week of what is the value for DJ Moore. And pretty much what I'm hearing is with that contract, with his age, again, he's not old, but he's not young. With that contract and kind of what we saw from this game of why the Bears would want to be moving on, it sounds like the best the Bears would be getting for DJ Moore is like a 3rd round pick. Now, TJ Watt, while he probably had the worst year of his pro career in terms of statistics and just making the impact on the game, the Bears would still have to be giving up DJ Moore, a 1st round pick and plus, to get a TJ Watt.
See, I'll agree with you. I think I probably am overvaluing DJ Moore. I don't think I'm undervaluing TJ Watt. I don't think any team gives a 1st round pick for TJ Watt anymore at this point in his career. Wrong side of 30, hefty contract, injury prone, hasn't been able to get it done in the big moments. Even in that playoff game, it wasn't TJ Watt that was making the plays. It was Jack Sawyer. It was Alex Highsmith. It was Nick Herbig. It
was other guys.
It wasn't TJ Watt.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean. Like, and his age can't be an excuse because it was Cameron Hayward. Hayward was still making those plays.
Yep.
TJ Watt was not. I don't think I'm undervaluing him. I really do think his value has dropped significantly to the point where even if the Steelers wanted to blow things up and start fresh, you're not getting enough value out of TJ Watt to warrant trading him anymore. You're not getting a 1st for him. Not at this stage. Maybe at trade deadline next year, if he has a good start to the season, that may change. But as of right now, going into the draft, you're not getting a 1st round pick for TJ Watt. Max Crosby? Yes. 100% you're getting a 1st, possibly 2.
I still think you're undervaluing TJ a lot here at the point, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It is going to be really interesting to see what happens for both of our 2 teams, because again, this is the first time, because we have been doing this for a handful of years. We have been talking in a podcast format through 2 Bears hiring cycles. When the Bears got Eberflus, and then when the Bears got Ben Johnson. So this is a little bit of a weird situation for both of us, where it's going, okay, the Bears are doing really well, and the Steelers are kind of the team where we're just going, what the fuck are you doing? And this is the first time in 18 years that the Steelers have had to look for a head coach. So it's kind of just no man's land for them here at the moment. And obviously, with the hiring of McCarthy, I think both of us are sitting back going like, well...
I think it's transitional. I really do. I said it at the top when we were first talking about Mike McCarthy and this Steelers thing. This feels like them breaking the mold so that the spotlight is not so intense on them. Because that's just it. Going into it, everybody's like, well, it was Chuck Noll, and then it was Bill Cowher, and then it was Mike Tomlin. Who's it going to be next? They have to get this right. They have to get a young guy, and it has to be the best new young coach. It has to be, because they've done it 3 times already, and it's all they've done. And so that's just it. They had worked themselves into that corner, and I can't remember who it was that said it, but he was like, imagine they do exactly that. They basically do with coaches what the Packers have done with quarterbacks, and they get it right again. They get that next guy. Can you imagine how much that pressure grows then for the next hire? It just keeps growing. And so this feels like them looking at it going, look, great story. We're this unicorn franchise that's only had 3 coaches over 65 years. We need to change that narrative, because when we go into that cycle, it intimidates and scares coaches away, I think. Because if you're a guy like Chris Shula or Nate Steelhouse or either Kubiak, Clay Clint, you look at that and you go, I have to be the best of the best. I have to be the next wonderkin. Like, I have to be a unicorn taking that role, because I'm following Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. Yep. Now we've got Mike Tomlin in there, or Mike McCarthy in there. And so whoever gets hired next, they go, oh, well, at least I'm not necessarily going to be compared to those other 3. It's just, I just have to be better than Mike McCarthy.
It's that old phrase of, you never want to be the guy that replaces the guy. You always want to be the guy that
Yeah.
replaces the guy who replaces the guy.
Yeah, and so this really, I hate it. I'm not happy with it. You know, it's shitty. This is the second really shitty offseason I'm going to have to deal with now, because it was last year too when I was like, please trade TJ Watt, please draft a core, blah, 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 blah. Everything I said last year, like none of it happened. It all went fucking ass backwards, and it's going to happen again this year. But again, as I said, the silver lining there is Mike McCarthy feels like a stopgap transitional coach. They're going, look, we're not doing this anymore. We're not hiring this young, upstart, defensive-minded guy who's going to run the team for 25 years. They don't have to do that now, because next coaching cycle where they're looking for a coach, it's not going to be, oh, well, who's the next one behind Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin, Chuck Noll, because you had that switch up. So now they can look at it and go, well, now we can hire an offensive guy. Maybe it's still the same thing where it's a young, untested offensive guy who becomes the coach. It goes well, and he's the coach for the next 20 years. That wouldn't surprise me. But the pressure is then off. And that's why I was saying I really, really would love for them to still push to get Nate Steelhouse in here as the OC. Basically just have him and Will Howard working together while Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers jerk each other off trying to win games and prove that they're still relevant. And then next year, fire Mike McCarthy out of the blue and be like, yeah, Nate Steelhouse is actually the head coach now. I can hope. That's all I can do, really. All I can do is hope at this point, because
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Right? All I've got to look at is it's not fucking 2011, you guys. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers thing? That was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
No. They both need out of the league.
I'm a little bit shocked at the Steelers. Obviously, signing the quarterback that beat them in the Super Bowl, and now signing the head coach that beat them in the Super Bowl. Like, it's...
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the way that the Steelers are going to try to present this, and sorry for cutting you off here, but they're going to present this of, oh, Mike McCarthy is a proven winner in this league. You know, he had a year off to reflect and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And you know what? He's from Pittsburgh. He knows how much the Steelers, this, that, and the other thing, and da-da-da-da-da. Because there's already pictures of Mike McCarthy in Steelers gear and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, just because he's from the city doesn't mean he's the right guy.
No, but that is exactly how they're going to frame this. They're trying to win their fans back, because these fans have been upset because we are used to a certain standard.
Yep.
You know, as Mike Tomlin always said, the standard is the standard. The problem is the Pittsburgh Steelers have not been the standard for over a decade.
Yeah, that is the problem. The standard is the standard, but unfortunately the standard for Pittsburgh the last 10 years was shit.
The standard died when the player safety initiative came in, because Steelers football prior to that was, we're going to hit you so hard that you can't tell which one of those four receivers that you're trying to throw to is the actual one, and which ones are the dual images you're seeing from being hit so fucking hard.
Yeah.
They can't do that anymore. You know, and this is a transitional thing for the Steelers. It's them going, look, we're bringing in a hometown guy. We're bringing in somebody who's familiar with Aaron Rodgers. He loves this city, blah, blah, blah. It's offense now. We're not worried about the defense. Our defense is really good, but we need to shift towards what the rest of the league is doing.
Yeah.
But I think they were afraid, and I think the coaches that were interviewing for the job were afraid to try and fill those shoes, because those are mighty big shoes to fill. Mike McCarthy now can be a scapegoat, as can Aaron Rodgers. They can have a good or a bad season, and this team can then move on from them and go, look, I'm going to get a young quarterback, going to get a young OC, head coach. We're going to do this right. In 10 years, we will be a juggernaut again. Because that is what this team needs to do. I've been saying it for like 2 years now, 3 years now. It's time to blow it up. It's time to start fresh, because you don't just get to fall into this cycle. Like, everybody's so mad because the Patriots are back. They had to be really shitty for like 5-6 years to be back this quickly. Like, really shitty.
Not
They were
only
winning.
did they have to go be really shitty, but they drafted a quarterback in the first round. It didn't work out. Then they had to do it again after giving up on that guy after 3 seasons to then get another quarterback. Now, mind you, this was the third quarterback that was selected in that class. And then him having a struggle of a rookie season, bringing in the right coaching staff to get that done. Like, people are going to complain about the Patriots being back, but they did it the right way.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like, the Patriots did it in the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers really should, because the Patriots went through the same sort of stuff, not to the same extent, but they went through Cam Newton and, Mac Jones, Jarrett Stidham, which is interesting since they're playing against him now this weekend in the championship game. So that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. But, like, the Patriots went through this cycle of trying to find that new quarterback and not hitting it right and having to be bad enough. And then, oh, look, they got good enough that they can go, we're going to go back to our defensive head coach because nobody wants Josh McDaniels. The problem for Pittsburgh is it's going to be really hard to find that OC that's really good that nobody else wants for head coach ever again.
Yeah.
That those are really hard to find because oftentimes teams will be blinded to that and go, he was so good, we're going to give him another shot as a head coach. Josh McDaniels never getting that shot again. Because oh my God, it was so bad every time.
Yeah.
But like, it's tough. Yeah. It's tough. It's going to be a messy, ugly offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hopefully Omar Khan can have himself a phenomenal draft and we get some good pieces for the future, plug some of those holes, and then we get to deal with Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. So that is what it is. I'm not looking forward to that, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I just ride it out and see what we have when we come out the other end.
Exactly. Last thing that I kind of want to talk about here, because we've been talking a lot about stuff here today, is we obviously are going to have our predictions next podcast about our award winners coming up. The finalists were officially released this week, and there's one thing that I already have a massive issue with some of the finalists that they have here on this list. Again, we'll have our entire predictions, but there's one thing that I am really annoyed with. Whoever wins Offensive Rookie of the Year this year is a mistake. Because there are 5 guys that are listed as finalists. None of them should be the Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I know who you want to be the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And he had some really great plays and great games. But he wasn't the reason that his team was so much better. Whereas some of these other guys that are out there, without them, that team wouldn't have made the playoffs or wouldn't have won as many games as they did. Whereas for your Bears, because I know who you're talking about, if they don't have him on the team, I think they still finish second in the conference. I think they still win their division. I do.
No. So obviously the finalists for the Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jackson Dart, quarterback for the Giants. He had a good year. Was it one of those years where you sit back and say that was an Offensive Rookie of the Year type performance from a quarterback? No. Emeka Ibuka looked like he was going to run away with that for the majority part of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Back half of the year kind of got hurt and just kind of fell backwards. Travion Henderson, again, this was one of those guys that just had nothing going for him for the entirety of the season. And then the last 6 games, they're like, oh, right, we drafted this kid in the second round. Let's use him. And he was really good. Tet McMillan, he had a good rookie season. I'm not going to say he changed like he was revolutionary, but he was a good rookie wide receiver. And then Tyler Shuck obviously came in for the Saints the last half of the year and gave the Saints a lot of life. Mm-hmm. The player that I think you think I'm referring to is Colston Loveland, the tight end for the Bears. Yeah. Colston Loveland for the first half of the season wasn't really utilized, but the second half, he was the Bears' most lethal threat in terms of the receiving game. Mm-hmm. Colston Loveland, if he had done this the entirety of the season, he not only breaks the record set by Brock Bowers, he surpasses them immensely.
Yep.
Colston Loveland is not just the best tight end out of this draft class, he is the best player out of this draft class. The season that Colston Loveland has had has propelled him to be a top 5 tight end in the league after 1 year. There are not 5 tight ends in the NFL that you can name that are better than Colston Loveland is right now. You can say Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. Sure, 100%. Those guys, they 100% deserve. You might be able to throw in another guy, whether George Kittle being healthy, 100%. After that point, I start to get to the point where I'm like, who else is a better tight end in the NFL? I really think that becomes a blurred line. Colston Loveland has the best performance by a rookie tight end in NFL history in the playoffs ever. He has the most yards ever from a tight end in playoff history. Now, again, I know these aren't postseason awards, and these are all voted prior to that. But Colston Loveland was the most dominant player for the Bears in the back half of the year. And he's established himself as not just a good player at his position, but one of the very, very best. And the fact that he is not going to win this award, but completely left off of the finalist list is a fucking joke.
The being left off the list, 100% agree with you. Like, he should be on that list well before Tyler Shuck or even Jackson Dart in my opinion. As far as I'm concerned, though, like, I look at it and Tatora McMillan is the offensive rookie of the year for me, because I look at him and I go, he's
not more important for the Panthers than Colston Loveland is important for the Bears.
What was that?
Tet McMillan is not more important to the Panthers offense than Colston Loveland is to the Bears offense. Colston Loveland is the engine that moves this Bears offense.
See, but like I said, I think the Bears still finish where they did without Colston Loveland. Whereas the Panthers, without McMillan, I think the Panthers are only a 2 or 3 win team again. I don't think they don't fight for a playoff spot. They don't win their division without McMillan. And that's the reason I think he should be the offensive rookie of the year. It is absolutely abysmal that Colston Loveland isn't even in the running as a finalist, because he should be, because he is very much the 2-3 in that spot, because Trayvon Henderson as well is one I look at that if he had been utilized all year, he would be hands down.
There's only one player on this list that I say, if that guy won over Colston Loveland, I could accept, and that's Henderson.
Yeah.
Tet McMillan, from a wide receiver standpoint, is not wide. Because again, we look at Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, when he won Offensive Rookie of the Year as a wide receiver, was spectacular a few years ago. Tet McMillan was nowhere even close to that, and he was the best rookie wide receiver. Like, the only player that I can view as being the best option for offensive rookie that could compare to Colston Loveland is Henderson. And even then, I would still say Henderson is a mistake over Colston Loveland. You take Colston Loveland away from the Bears offense, the Bears offense struggles.
Fair. No, I get where you're coming from. I don't agree with that. I think the Bears offense still fires on all cylinders without him. He is, and I'm not trying to take anything away from it. Like I said, it is a travesty. He is not a finalist. He should be, because he is a phenomenal player. I just don't think he was quite offensive rookie, just because he wasn't utilized all season. Whereas Tet McMillan really was. He was the focal point of that offense all year long.
And that's what I'm saying, is that Tet McMillan had to be the focal point of that offense. Loveland was brought in slowly, and then when he finally got going, that is when we saw the Bears offense be at its very, very best. Again,
well, I would credit that more to Ben Johnson than Colston Loveland at that point.
When Caleb Williams is asked about who his most reliable receiver is, it's Loveland. And again, I'm going to be heated on this one. Again, because he is a Chicago Bears player and I always want to root for that. But genuinely, again, I just sit back and say, the player who was the best player out of this class, who there was a fair amount of decent players out of this class, and who's solidified himself as a top 5 in the position and might be in the conversation after 2 years of being the best guy at his position in football, I look at this and say it's criminal to not have him on here, and it's criminal to not have him winning.
Yeah, not having him on there is absolutely criminal. Like he was one of the best 3, if not best 5. Like it is ridiculous to me to have Tyler shucking.
Yeah. I will be sitting very similar to what I did with the Defensive Player of the Year award last year, where we sat back and watched Patrick Surtain win the Defensive Player of the Year. It's straight like Trey Hendrickson won the Defensive Player of the Year award last year. I will be sitting back saying whoever wins it, they don't have it. It is Colson Loveland. Colson Loveland is the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and anyone who says differently, I will fist fight.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No. But that is, I feel like we're probably going to end this here as you look at me go like, I guess we're fist fighting.
I guess so.
Yeah. So Monday's going to be interesting. But yeah, that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan saying peace.